Hi, and welcome to Colleen's Corner. Today we're going to talk about spiritual warfare. And, we have some partner ministries that are just talking about how they're seeing spiritual warfare against friends of Jesus ramped up all over the world. And we certainly have felt that as a ministry. And so I just want to talk a little bit about Satan's tactics because oftentimes we think of war as, people are drafted or they volunteer, they go off to war, they fight something, it's not close to us, hopefully, but it could be. But it is, very vicious with a small group of people engaging in it. And the reality is, we don't really think about how Satan wars against us. In fact, probably since about the 17th century, we've never really thought about the spiritual world and even the concept of heaven or the new earth and new Jerusalem. Um, Satan has kind of done a lot of things with philosophy and other ways to convince us that this is all there is. And so all of our energy and thought should be going here. So, where'd this all come from? Well, interesting. If you go back and look at Genesis 3 and the story of the fall, clearly you'll see our enemy. Um, you see him before Genesis 3 and other scriptures that talk about the rebellion that he leads in heaven against God. He loses, and he and about a third of the angels are thrust to the earth. And so he is a huge adversary. Satan hates God and hates anything that resembles God, and is in a major power struggle with God, which has, with Jesus has already been won. He was thrust out of heaven, so he obviously, lost all that. But, we as believers become children of God. And so God is our Father. And interesting, if any of you have children and they're going through hard times, you probably hurt worse than if you were going through that thing. And so Satan's been pretty crafty to come after God's kids in a way of hurting God. In a way of getting God's kids to stay stuck in not returning to God being our master. And so let's just take a look at Genesis 3 and some of the true consequences of the fall, because they're a little bit more dishonest and insidious than we usually think about. And as a result, we just don't identify warfare in our lives. And so the story of Genesis 3, starts out with Eve speaking with the serpent. And the serpent asks, did God really say? He's asking her a question. Isn't it amazing how many times a question is asked to plant a seed or an idea in somebody's head? And when he asked, did God really say, a seed of distrust was placed inside of Eve. And so they go on to say, Eve explains what the rules were. And Satan says to her, you will not certainly die. Of course, we can get into the ramifications of what that death looked like, but that's for another time. But he says you will not certainly die. And here's the twist. Here's the seed of distrust. For God knows that when you eat from it, your very eyes will be opened. You will be like God, knowing good and evil. And not to let Adam off the hook, because he is standing there. When she actually bites the fruit, he's standing beside her. He bites the fruit as well. So this just wasn't a deception of Eve. Adam doesn't step in and, intervene in that situation at all. So they both made this choice that seems kind of crazy to us sometimes. Like, yeah, let's jump on that thing of, the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil must be something that we want. John Eldridge has a quote that I just think sums so much of this up in what Satan was really trying to do, and it's just so applicable to what is going on in our world today. And what he says is Satan came into the garden and whispered to Adam and Eve, and in them to all of us, you cannot trust the heart of God. He's holding out on you. You've got to take matters under your own control. That seed of mistrust is in our hearts today. It's an inherited mistrust of God, and we certainly don't want to give up the reins. It's just a really, really difficult thing to return all decision making and power back to God. And so that's one of the places that Satan really continues to come after us, is to whisper to us, you know, God's holding out on you. You're going to have to take control. So understand that just even little thoughts that he puts into your head are ways that he's really, really attacking you. I think it's interesting if in today's context, Satan was peddling some kind of pharmaceutical drug versus a fruit, he would have had to put an incredible disclaimer on it. And so I wonder what it would look like if we think about what really were the consequences of the fall. How does he come after us? What does that attack look like? And we do it with a disclaimer. And we think about, wow, if he had really told us all the possible effects of eating this fruit, would we have taken the bait? I mean, would we have signed the contract? Would we have eaten? Because it's interesting to me, I struggle to understand why Adam and Eve would have ever said, we know what good is, we've seen that in the garden. We don't know this evil thing. But before we bite this fruit, let's go get a little bit more information of what evil is so that we understand what we're signing up for. And it doesn't appear that that dialogue happened. It appears that they ate pretty quick because what they were looking for was the power and the control versus the concern that eating is ingesting. And so both the knowledge of both good and evil, we'd be taking them into our very body. So it's not even just the outside world. We are ingesting something. And so it's going to really change who we are on the inside as well as the outside. And so, yeah, I sometimes struggle to think about why wouldn't they have wanted more research on evil, or what did that look like? When I create a list of the consequences of the fall in terms of effects, if I was going to do a disclaimer, if you eat this, you will take control of your life. You no longer will be controlled by God, even though that's kind of a lie because God was never controlling us. The fact that he even gives us this choice means he wasn't controlling us. But here's how my disclaimer goes. If you eat of this fruit, the most horrendous types of evil will be inflicted upon you and will reign in your body. You will be thrust into a world at war. At times, you will feel like everyone hates you. Everyone will be out for their own best interests. So what you've looked at as love and shalom, how do I serve you, which is the posture of heaven, is going to be, how do I serve me? And, you'll see that break in community. You will never again feel safe. You will never again feel safe. You will yearn for connection, the connection that existed in the garden between us and God and between each other, even the connection with my own self and the connection with creation, with the animals, understanding the structure of man being set to reign over creation. All of that would have worked, but you will lose all of that connection. You will feel so disconnected, even with the people most intimate in your life. You're going to yearn for connection. Your choice to eat will put you at odds with God, clearly. Actually, your whole spirit will die. You're made body, soul, and spirit. So your spirit's going to just be dead because it can't connect with God. You're not going to have a clue who you are. You're going to walk out somebody else's life. Some imposter is going to be in the driver's seat. You're going to totally forget who you are. you're never going to trust another human being fully again. And creation's even going to turn on you. The context of work and cultivating and all the things that we're called to do in the cultural mandate, they're no longer going to work. Even your own body is going to turn against you. Your physical body, including your brain, will become diseased and turn on you in many different ways. Very significantly is that the things God placed in each human heart that only He can fill will no longer be available to you by only the pure source, which is God Himself. You will chase after synthetic ways to get these needs met. Need for significance, for belonging, to be understood, to be safe, to have purpose, and to love in an agape way, and to feel that love, an incredible love that can never be broken. All of those things are never going to be filled again because the synthetic can't do what God can do. And finally, you will have a thirst for life that will never be quenched. So, if this was your contract and you're looking at this fruit that looks incredibly appealing, and you're deciding if you want to take control away from God, you now have the garden experience, which is shalom and incredible. Would you sign that contract when you heard all those other things? I think probably not. And so there was an incredible deception. So I just listed a whole bunch of things that are consequences of eating the fruit. I would love for us to think a little bit about the fact that, do we even wake up each day knowing we're in a world at war with an enemy who seeks to attack us through other people, through an assault of technology, through so many things, that he just rails against us, especially the children of God. He rails against our physical healing. He rails against our spiritual and soul healing. Anything that helps us give control back over to God, He's going to work really hard to keep us stuck in our own thoughts and our own battle over who knows better how to run our life. And actually, because of the culture that we live in, the things that our culture tells us are great and wonderful, and we've experienced some of them, and I've thought, yeah, that's pretty good. Those things are not going to fill what God would fill, and God is going to ask us to do things to return back to that garden place with Him that are so counterintuitive to what our culture is telling us. We see that huge today, where it gets confusing. I mean, Christianity has become so cultural in the West. There's very little of a biblical worldview left in it. And as a result, you don't see Christians really digging into pick up your cross and follow me, like Jesus said. You know, the pearl of great price, you're going to have to give everything up, you know, for this thing that you found that is more valuable. And, you know, that's really the difference between choosing the kingdom and choosing the riches of this world. You know, so Satan is going to really work to keep those things down. If you feel isolated, if you feel lonely, there's an epidemic. Our Surgeon General is telling us about loneliness and disconnection. If you feel overwhelmed because your finances and, you know, every time you turn around, you feel like you're getting attacked, you know, in this area of finances, and your cars are breaking down and both of them break down at the same time, and it just really feels overwhelming, you can almost be guaranteed that unless that's been your life and you've lived that way all the time, that they're real tactics of the enemy to distort you, to sow the seeds of, can you really trust God? Is He really going to come through from you? He's attacking people in health. That has been my experience very much in the last 2 years. I have a genetic disorder that just feels like he really ramps up whenever I'm either going to be teaching or even editing our book, or it feels like he will just really nail me with some pretty significant pain. And so, yeah, if that's your situation, if friends are like turning on you or just weird stuff's happening, we're seeing major, major relational assault. And so it's a difficult time. It is a time where we need to know the Bible inside and out, know what the Word of God says. It is a time that we need to have intimacy with God and with Jesus, that we can be quiet and commune and get filled up in the places of our core longings. And it also is really important that we understand this is a very short period of our lives, because eternal life um, is indefinite. And so we will, those of us who believe in Jesus' sacrifice, we will return to the garden. We will return to what God created us for. Sin will be destroyed, it will be no more. And the new earth will come down, and we will get a chance to restart, fulfilling the cultural mandate, which is to spread shalom across the earth, which is the full rulership of heaven, and with all the rules of shalom, all the rules of the kingdom. We will experience it, but we've got to get through this short time. And I think with Satan realizing that his time is growing short, we're seeing prophecy fulfilled, Old Testament prophecies, New Testament. I mean, we're seeing so much prophecy fulfilled. People are predicting that we are in the end times, like Jesus's return is imminent. I don't know if that's true, only because we're not supposed to be thinking about what is the day, the time, the hour. But we are to live like he is returning at any minute. And so hopefully you are encouraged. If you are in a hard spot and you're feeling like you're alone in it, you're not seeing it as spiritual warfare, but there are many things railing against you. Just like you to spend some time in prayer about that. Understand what it looks like to just keep your eyes focused on Jesus and his promises. It is the only anchor for our soul. And if you are not anchored, you will be tossed to and fro in some pretty tumultuous times. So I bless each of you who's stayed with me till the end of this message. Hopefully there is at least one person who needed to hear this. And until the next Colleen's Corner, shalom, my friends. Peace be with you. Nothing missing, nothing broken.